Hello! Hello again, Theatrics, and welcome to the Theatric Dyspraxic podcast with me, Brandon, the Theatric Dyspraxic. It's been a while since I've put out a podcast, and, well, it's been hard for me to keep a complete track of mind to be able to talk for an hour or so without stumbling over my words or, stammering or blanking and creating some dead air. But I have a few things, we'll see how much it is. I am currently at my parents' house in Palestine, Texas. I am up in my dad's music room, which used to be my brother's room. Still not sure if he's going to take it back or not, but there's a lot of clutter in here, a lot of instruments, a lot of guitars. I'm sitting at a keyboard right now. I don't know if you can hear me fiddling with the keys. See if this works. See if I can... No, there's no sound coming out. Let me see. Could be through headphones. I don't know. Let me turn this back off before I get in trouble. Let me try to get a little bit closer so that you can hear me better. This is so unprofessional. Yeah, I wanted to do a podcast since I just recently moved to a new town. Well, it's actually not new for me because I used to live here a few years ago. Why am I so out of breath? And a lot of memories here. I lived here from about 2015 until 2018, whenever I initially moved back in with my parents, following my time living in a town called Seguin. And not really sure when my book is going to be released, but I do talk about my experiences there. And here, probably won't be talking about my experiences this time around, but yeah, there's a lot of things that happened during that time. Some things that I wish I could forget. Some things that are a little bit nostalgic, but it's one of those things where the thing about nostalgia is that, yeah, you always look at certain places in your youth and in your past, even if they're not in your youth, because I'm obviously talking about times when I was still in my 20s, so I was still an adult. But you can still feel nostalgic about things. I mean, you can feel nostalgic about things that happened a year ago. You know, there's no limit on what you feel nostalgic about. But nostalgia can be a problem for people, because sometimes people get so wrapped up in their own sentiments and their own attachments to their to the past and their prior experiences. But the thing is, you can't relive things that you've lived once. The second time around is never going to be as blissful as the first time around. And so you just have to accept, that you had that experience and be happy that you had it. And hopefully you'll have some similar positive experiences going forward. And that's what happens. That's life for ya. I feel like my family in particular, and I know this isn't just limited to my family because this is just a thing that people do, but I feel like we're very we focus too much on nostalgia. And nostalgia is a beautiful feeling. It's very wistful, and it just feels good to look back and be like, oh, that was, great time in my life. But the thing is, you were a different person then. You felt differently about things then, especially if you're looking back and reminiscing on things from your childhood. Because, children always... There's something about the way that a child looks at the world and feels about things that is... I don't know. It's sweet, and I think children get more pleasure out of just their senses because everything is new to them. And then as you get older, you feel like everything sucks, and you just feel like empty. And I don't know if that's a general adult feeling, but a lot of adults feel that way. Could just be being a millennial and the fact that many of us grew up in the internet age and we were exposed to a lot of things that we weren't quite exposed to when we were children. I don't know. Is what I'm saying making sense to you? I don't know. But we've recently moved back for financial reasons. I'm not going to go too deep into it because obviously it's not just personal to me. And of course, I'll talk about anything personal to me. but it's also personal to my family, my parents, my siblings, and I don't want to throw them. I don't want to expose anything, not expose as if they've done anything wrong, but there's nothing shady. It's just like, I don't know. But we have a brother who lives up in Washington who's fallen on hard times, and we are trying to help him out in any way that we can. But the problem is, when my brother and I were living on our own, we had a hard time saving money, and we would send, a little bit of money at a time, but he really needs somebody up there with him. And, oh, I accidentally hit the, that must have been a loud noise. It's really hard to balance a laptop and a microphone on a keyboard. There's not really anything else that I can sit on that would. It's not phonetic. I don't know. This is sort of closer to my mouth level, I guess. But what am I saying? Yeah, we have a brother who's fallen on hard times, and we want to help him out. But when we were living on our own, we had a hard time paying rent. And when the pandemic started, that just threw everybody a curveball. It just threw a wrench in everything everyone was doing. I lost a job. I was unemployed for a while. My brother had to take care of rent by himself. So obviously there was no money, no means that we could use to help him out. Maybe I've said too much already. Maybe I shouldn't be going into what's been going on with him. But at any rate, we were not saving any money, and we want to eventually work our way up to helping him to moving where he is, if that is an option. But because of the current climate, it's hard to travel, and also the economy is just really bad. I mean, I'm not an economist, so I'm not qualified to speak too much on the economy. But I certainly I get distracted very easily. But I've certainly suffered financially from all that, and I had a job briefly at Albertsons, which is a grocery store here in America. I don't know if Albertsons is a global chain, but yeah, I was working there for a while, and I talked about it a bit. I haven't finished it because I haven't worked on my blog for a while, but I haven't finished sort of exactly what happened with that, but I eventually, I had some struggles, mainly to do with my dyspraxia, which I was open about to my employers. But I don't know, they had a lot of issues with me, I had a lot of issues with them, and it seemed that they were trying to push me out, and they found a way to push me out. And eventually I'll write about that experience, because it's not really, I don't think this is the proper platform to discuss that. But at any rate, that was about maybe a month and a half ago, and we were just kind of like living below our means, since my brother was doing DoorDash in our town, Weatherford, and we were having trouble financially, because he was paying all the rent and the bills and stuff, because I didn't have money or any income. So eventually we had to talk to our parents, and they allowed us to move in with them, and that's what we're doing now. I have not found another job. The thing is, my parents are, they're getting older. My father recently has some health problems, so we have to be careful in this current situation with the pandemic and with COVID-19, because that's still an issue in our society. Even though people seem to have forgotten about it, people are going out without masks, no stores enforcing it. Now I go to the store and I see the employees doing that chin diaper thing, which I just think is so unprofessional and ridiculous, because people are still dying from this. No matter what you think, if you think it's a hoax or whatever, there are reported cases of thousands of people dying. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how else we can enforce this, because people don't listen to things that are enforced. My sister-in-law said that part of the problem is that Texas is a good old boy state, which means that it's pretty much like, you look after yourself, I'll look after myself, even with regards to things like the law and national policies. So even if they say, what am I saying? Even if they say that you have to wear a mask and you have to social distance, the law is not going to enforce it. I've seen it. I've seen officers in stores, in places, they don't care. They don't look at it. They just look after themselves. They don't care about a pandemic and a deadly virus that is killing everybody. So that's another issue too with us, is we have to find jobs where we don't have to mix with the general public. And for people in our experience, in our wealth, our financial status, and our class status, I guess, there's not many options for us as far as working jobs where we don't work with the public, which I am not a big fan of anyway. I mean, I generally have enjoyed working with certain customers and stuff, but because you always find good people, you always find decent people, but you always find a lot of assholes. And should I say that? You also find a lot of very entitled people. There's a reason why the term Karen exists nowadays, and you find them everywhere. You find them all day in any kind of service job, whether it's retail or fast food. We've dealt with many, many, many. I've dealt with many, many, many. I've been yelled at. I've been screamed at. I've been called an idiot. It's just the general daily life of somebody in that field. And they don't get paid enough for all the crap that they deal with. But I don't know. My friend works at a call center, and he deals with the same thing. It's just over the phone, which I think I could deal with more if I don't have to look at somebody as they're yelling at me. You just like put the receiver away from you, as if it's one of those old rotary phones. But you just don't pay attention to it. You're just like, yeah, all right, we get it. You're mad. Of course, you say it a bit, use a bit nicer language than that. It's like, I understand, ma'am. I understand. I know that your Fruit Loops were the off-brand kind. I'm sorry. But, I don't know. It would be nice to work something where I could work from home, which is what I'm aiming for. But obviously, we just recently moved in, and we haven't really, I don't know. It's been hard to motivate yourself to try and find those types of jobs, especially because there's a lot of clutter around here. There's not really much of a space. I mean, I'm up here mixed in with, instruments, and I'm sitting at a keyboard. There's boxes everywhere. I mean, there's not much there's not much room or space. And even in my room, there's a bunch of stuff in there that has to be sorted through. Maybe I should learn how to play the piano or learn a few chords on the guitar. I used to know a couple of chords like G and C, but I've since forgotten them because I can't remember things and my fingers don't ever want to work with my brain. I say a lot. I use a lot of filler words, and I'm very sorry about that. I'm sorry if it gets annoying that I always say and like and stuff. I sound like Chris Watts, the guy who killed his whole family. Very dark joke. But it's just because of the way my mind works, and if I could help it, then I would. But this is just the way it works. I'm probably not the kind of person that should be doing a podcast. I've kind of rambled. I mean, this is just me rambling. The Rambling Podcast. Ramblin' Brandon! That's what I should call it. Ramblin' Brandon. The Ramblin' Brandon Podcast. Yeah! I wonder if my family heard that. Where was I going with all this? So, that's pretty much what we're doing. We're just back at home. I get to see my dogs again, Oreo and Shiro. They're supposedly Japanese chins, but they look more like Shih Tzus. But it doesn't really matter because they're sweet and cute. I think they might be a mix because they act like Japanese chins because they do there's a thing called the chin spin where they spin around a lot and they jump up on their hind legs. I don't know. There's just certain traits that Japanese chins have and they do act like them, but they don't. I don't really know how to describe it. There's the collar of a Japanese chin is usually longer. They look more like I don't know. They look more like cats, I guess. But Oreo and Shiro look more like Shih Tzus, and Shiro is white. That's why we call him Shiro, because that's the Japanese word for white. And Shiroki, racist cha. And Oreo is black and white, which is why we call him Oreo-cha, Oreo-sama. He's so cute. They are so cute. Everybody already thinks I'm sexist. I might as well be racist while I'm at it. Yeah, the main reason why I wanted to talk today, we're about 15 minutes in, it's a good time to talk about it, I guess. Of course, I'm not really sure exactly what I'm going to say. Normally I have something planned ahead of time, but I'm just kind of talking now, which is why I'm just kind of like rambling and jumping from topic to topic. I'm probably very ADHD, if you haven't noticed, because I just kind of, I don't know, I kind of just ramble on and go from here and there, and I never know what I'm talking about. That is ADHD, right? Where you just like talk about random things, and you just like latch onto a topic, and then you find another topic that you just can't wait to jump to. You just like impulsively jump to different topics. Yeah. So this is where the tone gets a little bit more serious. There's some things that have happened recently that I think need to be brought up because they are in relation to the podcast and my name and things like that. And I just think it's important to address it and put things out in the open, because I'm a very open kind of guy. I try to address things and confront issues if there's some kind of contention between me and others or whatever. I just think it's important to talk about it and get things out in the open. I'm all about keeping the peace, but sometimes I say things out of impulse or just without really thinking. I don't have much of a filter when it comes to my opinions about certain topics, and I don't usually realize. Part of me doesn't care because, I'm entitled to my opinion. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I don't necessarily think that my opinions are that controversial when you break them down. But there's certain things that I say, and I'll be the first to admit that I don't always use the proper language for certain things, and it's very easy for people to misconstrue my intentions or my context, I guess, from what I'm saying, or the subtext maybe, and so people take offense to things that I say. And then, that's the nature of having an opinion, especially since I recently joined Twitter. And I've been a bit active on Twitter. Not always, but, I will post certain things. But, I don't know, social media is such a toxic thing. And I understand its uses, which is why I still use it. Because I try to use it to promote things like dyspraxia awareness and my podcast and just different things that are going on. But my problem is it's so easy for you to have a thought and just broadcast that thought out, just like this right now. And it was actually a friend of mine who encouraged me to take up Twitter. I resisted Twitter for a long time, for many years. I had a Twitter like many years ago, and I didn't post a single thing because it was like, well, I have Facebook and I shouldn't even be on Facebook. But, I can't have a Twitter. But since I had, the Theatric Dyspraxic name and my podcast, I'm trying to build a name for myself, which, of course, I'm not doing a very good job with that if I'm posting things that are controversial. But I guess you expect people to be on your side or at least understand your point of view. But evidently people don't. And you hear a lot about how there's so many social justice warriors on Twitter, and there's a lot of people, you know, I mean, Twitter has such a big hand in things like cancel culture, and I mean, hell, Gilbert Gottfried got in trouble for tweeting jokes about the Japanese tsunami, and he just kind of like, oh, and he lost a job of his because of that. It's like, well, yeah, people do lose their jobs because of things that they tweet. So it's a kind of a scary thing. And now I've sort of become a victim of it, I guess, where, you know, if you post your opinions, I mean, Twitter somehow is worse than Facebook. Because I was always posting about stuff on Facebook and people get annoyed and stuff. But there's people who have been offended by things that I've posted. So I'll get into a little bit of what I've said that people have had an issue with. But I have to say that what's bothered me recently is there are people within the dyspraxic community and people that I considered friends who have recently blocked me on not just Twitter, but on every platform, Facebook and Instagram, Twitter. Not sure about YouTube, but I don't even know if you can block people on YouTube. It's not really as much of a social media site. But one of these, and I feel like I have to mention who they are because otherwise I can't properly express how I feel about it without mentioning them by name. Not to dox anybody, but one of them was Billy Stanley of Dyspraxic Help for You, which if you've listened to any of my previous podcasts, you might recognize him as my first guest on my 3-part inaugural broadcast. And we had a great conversation. We had a great interview. But it wasn't just the fact that he was my guest. He was also a good friend of mine. He was one of my biggest supporters. And he's the one that basically got me into podcasting, and he helped me set up my podcast. And he was going to help me even further by helping me share it on other platforms like Spotify. Now it's only on YouTube. Because I can't figure out how to, I mean, I have it on Anchor, but for some reason I must have did something wrong where I can't share it on all the other platforms like Spotify and stuff. But I only listen to podcasts on YouTube, so that's all I've ever really focused on. But the problem is, he recently blocked me. I just found that out today. And so I figured out last night that somebody else had blocked me, and then I was, since he knew the person, I was gonna ask him, you know, what was it that I said, what was it that I did, you know. I just want a little bit of some clarity, because, you know, I don't try to offend anybody, but I have my opinions that people may disagree with, and people always share things that I disagree with. I don't ever have a problem with them, you know. I just ignore it. And that's that's what you should do. If you have a problem with something somebody says, just ignore it. Don't make a big deal out of it. You know, I mean, you could challenge them. You could put a comment and stuff. But if you just are like, you know what, I don't like this person's stuff, you just hide what they say or unfollow them or whatever. But to block them, I mean, blocking is reserved for people who harass you, right? That's the only reason I've ever blocked anybody from anything, is if I felt like they were harassing me. I blocked, there's only 2 people I can remember that I blocked. Well, I remember a few people, but it was always people who would either send me unflattering messages all the time. They're always spamming my inbox or account. Maybe they put me on blast publicly and tried to publicly shame me on Facebook or something, and I've blocked them for that. But I've also blocked, I blocked somebody once because they kept trying to convert me to Islam. It was weird because he was this white guy I used to work with at a sandwich shop back in Seguin, and he, I guess, converted to Islam, and he kept messaging me about, Allah loves you, and I'm like, oh great, and he just kept trying to bug me about it. And then I was like, yeah, well, I don't really, believe in that stuff. And he's like, well, you're an idiot. And I was like, I'm not dealing with that. So I blocked him. And then, of course, everybody has those people that maybe they're a little bit too into you. And it's flattering up to a point. But then when they get to the point where they start shaming you for not liking them back, and they just won't leave you alone, and they won't, if they make you uncomfortable and you let them know, you give them a warning, and they still do it. Sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands. I don't feel good about it, and it's only happened to me once or twice, but it is just what it is. But I've never blocked somebody because I disagreed with their opinion or their statements. I have friends who say things that are really that are troubling. I have friends who say things that I construe as racist, but I just move past it because that's all you can do. I'm not going to destroy a friendship because somebody has certain traits that I don't like, because otherwise who do you have left? Nobody's perfect. You can't expect everybody to agree with you on everything and just hate them if they don't. That's childish. Part of being an adult is listening to other people's opinions and taking in different perspectives. And I understand that, but evidently a lot of other people don't. But what hurts about this whole situation is that Billy was my friend. He and I messaged quite a bit. We talked on Zoom. We talked through, we would call each other. He was a good friend of mine. He was a supporter of mine. He was always sharing my podcast on his accounts, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. He was very supportive of me and what I've been doing with my podcast. And he has helped me a lot. And I appreciated that. And I was always saying, I want to return the favor. I want to collaborate with you on something, because you've helped me so much, and you've been so patient with me, and you've taken so much time to help me. And yet I've discovered that he's blocked me, and he's given me no reason. Nobody's given me a reason. The people that have blocked me, I don't know who else is going to block me since this. And I don't know what it is that I've done that hurt them so personally that they felt the need to block me and not even confront me about their issues with things that I've said or done. I apologize if I've offended people, but I am entitled to my opinion. And, well, let me get into what it was that perhaps people have an issue with. Because some of the things that I say are quite critical of feminism and I guess women, but I would extend it to gender. It's just that I tend to focus more on women, on the issues with women, because I'm a man and I've had my experiences with women, and that's just the world that I live in more. It's the same exact thing with the feminist side of things, where they'll post about the patriarchy and toxic masculinity, because that's the world they live in. And I completely respect that, and I completely understand that. If you're a woman, most of the time, odds are you have had your bad experiences with men. You may have been sexually assaulted by men. You may have been catcalled. You may have had people, you may have been systematically limited because you're a woman and because somebody else was a man. Somebody's made unwanted passes at you. There's a number of things and a number of issues for how men treat women, and always have. And I'm completely against that. I condemn that kind of behavior. I don't engage in that kind of behavior. I don't sexually harass anybody. I don't, but I will say that there's two sides to everything. And I say that about every topic. There's always two sides to everything. And that may be the world that women live in, and I understand that and I respect that. But there's also another side of it, which is what men go through. And I've met a lot of women who understand this and who will be vocal about it. Like, the courts are generally against men, and men generally have a harder time when it comes to things like custody and societal expectations. And the hypocrisy of women and the double standards of women, because men have it easier on certain levels, but so do women. And women have it easier, I feel like, on a social level, as far as finding friends, as far as dating and finding relationships. It's much easier for a woman. And if you're an attractive woman, even if you're just moderately attractive, you will find tons of guys who will spoil the crap out of you and will take you to fancy dinners and dates and stuff like that, who will, I mean, you can find a nice sugar daddy, you can find somebody that'll take care of you. I mean, heck, everybody, my sister's living situation for the past several years has been living with boyfriends, and she probably wouldn't, be able to support herself on her own if it weren't for that. And I don't mean to say anything bad about my sister. It's just that's just one example. There's a lot of women who are like that. When they get older, instead of living on their own, they'll be supported by a boyfriend or something. And that's not every woman. I'm not saying that's every single woman. There's a lot of women who are independent and who choose to work hard and live on their own, and I applaud that. But I look at things like everybody is an equal, and everybody should be an equal. But part of being an equal is that you are not immune to criticism. You aren't perfect. You can't be coddled and treated like you're a perfect person just because you're a woman. And just because women have gone through certain things in society, everybody has. And the way that we used to treat them is wrong, but that's not the way things are now. And yes, there's still issues that women face, but there's also issues that women face. I mean, you take about the Me Too movement, for example. There's a reason why that is in place, and it's in place to help women. But at the same time, there's a lot of guys that get wrongfully accused of sexual assault, and we live in a society where we automatically blame the guy for everything. That is the way our society works. It's innocent, or it's guilty until proven innocent, and even when you're proven innocent, you are still guilty in the eyes of the populace, if you're a man. I mean, look at Woody Allen, for example. It's been proven that he did not molest Dylan Farrow, but everybody believes her, even though it's not true. But everybody believes it, and you can go online, you can find every bit of evidence that shows that it was not true. It was not an actual event, an incident that actually occurred. So that being said, I don't know what it is that I've said that people have had such an issue with. I'm going to go through a little bit of my Twitter feed just to see if I can find anything. I'm getting no reception up here, so I can't say that things will load, but I have it on my page right now. Oh yeah, I said one thing that said, it would be nice to have the option of just finding a sugar daddy to solve your financial problems, provide you security and protection. Now I know that that's a little bit of a sly statement. The problem with Twitter is that you're limited on the amount of characters you can use. So it's very easy, because you try to be as minimal as possible. So, you can't always provide context for things that you say. At the time, I was just thinking about, how I see in a lot of women that I've known, where they would be in my situation right now financially if they didn't have a guy to latch on to who will take care of them financially and support them. And I'm not speaking about all women, but a fair amount. More women than men. Because men kind of, even now, even though the things have changed, men are kind of, they're still expected to be the breadwinners, and they're still expected to make a lot of money. And, there's a lot of expectations that and standards that women have on men, and we can't always, all of us can't always live up to that standard. It's like me, I don't have very much, I don't have money. I've struggled, because I'm dyspraxic, I've struggled to perform certain jobs, and I've struggled to maintain certain jobs. I can't drive, things have been really hard for me. And if you know, if there was just a guy or somebody that was like, hey, I'll take care of you, I'll support you, I'll pay for everything for you. Well, technically that's kind of what I'm doing since I'm living with my parents, but it's not the same arrangement. But you know, I don't know. I feel like people expect you to be perfect and fully self-sustainable, and I don't know. I guess I'm not ever really going to be in a situation where I can support not just myself but somebody else, which is why I don't date. Because I'm just not. I'm not in a good space mentally. Plus, women don't like me. I'm not attractive to women. If you saw, I mean, you could see my face. There's a reason why I wear the hat. It's because I have a really messed up hairline. You know, so yeah. So that's one tweet. I know there's no responses to it, so I don't know if that's something people have an issue with. Let's see here. Other things, talking about my podcast. Posted something about being an atheist, which I don't think that's something anybody's had an issue with, because as far as I know, the people who've blocked me aren't like real devout Christians, at least not to that point where if you say that there's nothing wrong with admitting you're an atheist, it's not even critical of religion. It's just being okay with being an atheist if you're an atheist. Let's see here. Oh, okay. So I said something that did get some responses, and I didn't really, because I'm just on my phone when I go on Twitter, and I don't like to argue with people on the internet anymore. I used to do it all the time, and I hated it, and it just puts you in a bad place. And I just try to, if I say something, and I'm not defending myself as far as just putting all my thoughts and feelings out there, because that's not a good thing to do, and I definitely can. I'm definitely somebody that can say that, but sometimes people respond. I'm just like, I don't feel like responding. But I said something about standing up for the rights of minority groups doesn't mean you have to oppress the opposite group. Supporting gay rights doesn't mean you have to shame straight people. Supporting Black Lives Matter doesn't mean you have to say white people are evil. Be all-inclusive. And of course, people responded saying, there is no oppression against, and oppression may be a strong word, but you can't deny that in today's society we do condemn straight white males, I guess you could say, to simplify it. We do hate on them quite a bit. Do we not? I mean, I see it all the time. I'm always hearing people talk about the patriarchy, and I mean, I talked about some of the things that men face. How, men are automatically seen as liars and sexual deviants, and that they're usually blamed for a good deal of society's issues. And it's, I mean, there's a reason why it exists, because throughout history, it was usually straight white males who did much of the oppression. But those people don't exist anymore. They're dead. And a lot of the people nowadays, a lot of people are more progressive. That's just the way the world is now, and that's great. We should be progressive. But part of being progressive isn't making the other side your enemy. That's what I hate about society now. Everything is so divided. Everything is always us versus them. And just because you're white doesn't mean that black people should hate you. Just because you're white doesn't mean you're a racist. You aren't a racist for being white, even though no matter what your history was, no matter what your ancestors did. It's about what is in your heart and in your head. And if you don't hate black people, then you're not a racist. And it's not just black people, but, Hispanics or Arabs, I guess. If you don't hate people, then you're not racist. But a lot of people don't realize that they're racist. But I don't know. I can only speak for myself. I don't have racial. I mean, everybody has racial thoughts, not racist per se, but you know, sometimes like sometimes you have a thought where you're talking to a black guy, and for some reason a thought pops in your head like, this guy's black. It's like, well, yeah. So, and you have like this thought, this like argument with your brain where you're just like, why are you focusing on that right now? You know, he's just a guy. You know, he's a pretty cool guy. He's fun to talk to. I'm having a good conversation with this guy. Why are you focusing on the fact that he's black? And then you start thinking like, don't think about things race. Don't think racist thoughts. Don't think. Well, why am I even thinking about the possibility of having racist thoughts? You have a battle with your own brain, even though nobody else is there to hear it. It's just like, you know, I mean, it's better than what some people have in their brain. We're just like, this guy, I don't like him. I don't like the color of his skin. I don't like his afro. And it's just like, no, I like the afro. I like the color of his skin. It makes me think of hot chocolate. No. Oh, no. No, it doesn't. Black people, when I'm talking to you, I'm not thinking of hot chocolate. Alright? Just so you know, I'm not thinking that. I'm looking at you, the person. I'm listening to you, the guy. I don't want to lick your face because you remind me of a big Hershey bar. Or like a chocolate egg or Cadbury egg or what are those eggs called? Like, where they're like chocolate egg. I guess like a Cadbury egg, maybe. Cadbury egg. And the other issue too, of course, is sexism. And of course, I have been accused by a lot of people of being a misogynist. I don't think I'm a misogynist, because I think to be a misogynist, you have to view women as inferior to your gender, and you have to have a sort of a deeply rooted hatred of them in general. And I don't at all. I view women as human beings. I don't view them as any lesser or superior to me for being a man. They're not immune to toxic behavior. And in fact, I see a lot of toxic behavior within the feminist community. If you broke down my view of women's rights and everything, I would be considered a feminist by that definition. But it's the way the term has been hijacked by this group that says that every woman is a saint and every man is a pig, and men are all rapists and women are all victims. They're only seeing a very limited view of the picture, you know. And you can ask any guy about their experiences with women, and you will see that women aren't all saints. They're not all little angels. And you can't really generalize them, because they're half of the human race. And the human race is pretty diverse as far as our characters. So you can't just say they're all the same, whether it's good or bad. There's bad apples in the bunch, and then there's those that are really great. I mean, I still believe that it's possible that I can meet a woman that is just like perfect, like pious and pretty much saint-like, you know, where they're just pure of heart. They exist out there. In fact, you find them everywhere. I mean, I like to see myself as a person who has a good understanding of people. And I can see things in people, good and bad, and I see their qualities, and I see their negative traits as well. And I don't see it as necessarily as a male versus female thing, but you have to admit that there are certain double standards. There are certain things that men experience that women don't, and that women experience that men don't. And there are certain things, and also we're all shallow. That's another thing too. If I can scroll up a bit, oh yeah, I said I think people focus too much on gender. Just be who you are. That's because we do have this division between men and women where we do focus too much on gender, I think. And it's the same with the trans community. And I'm not going to speak on my thoughts on the trans community because that's a whole other can of worms to open. Of course, I think they should have rights and everything. But there's things I don't understand about it because, I may be a man, but I don't necessarily feel like my identity is tied to my gender. It's just that's who I am. Biologically, I'm a man. I have a male body. I don't necessarily think in my head like, oh, do I identify as a man? It's like, well, I have masculine traits. I have feminine traits. There's a lot of toxic masculinity that I pick up on, but that's always talked about. So I don't feel the need to talk about it because it's always talked about everywhere anyway. But one of the big issues that I see with men is that they feel such a strong need to be men. They have such a strong need to be macho. And you can't always be that. Every guy has their vulnerable side. Even if they try to hide it and try to push it down as much as they can. You just can't always do that. There's still that. It's still a part of you, and what it does is it affects your health. It affects your mental health. I mean, that's another double standard too. Is that women, their mental health is often supported more than men. And I'll bring up another thing too. Again, I don't mean to bring up my sister, but I have a twin sister. If people didn't know that. And having a twin sister, growing up with a twin sister who has had her own, bouts with mental health, I can definitely say that I've experienced the double standards. She always had an easier time making friends. She had an easier time dating, even though that she was like me in many ways, as far as like anxiety and moodiness or whatever. Temperament. I mean, we're very alike, except that we're opposite gender, and I think we would be much more alike if we were the same gender. But because we're, she's a girl and I'm a boy, we're very. I mean, it's like we have two older brothers who are twins, and they're both boys, obviously. So they have a lot in common, and they have a lot more in common than my sister and I. And it would probably be the same kind of situation. Because we grew up together, we shared a room for many of our lives, we probably would be a lot more alike, but there's a lot of differences, and I boil those differences mainly down to our genders, because we have had different life experiences because of our genders, even though we've had the same kind of upbringing, we grew up in the same environment, same people, but she was a girl and she had a different experience. She had an easier time making friends than I did. She had an easier time being listened to than I did, because people always, when you're a boy and you're dealing with something, people are just like, oh, I'll just deal with it. Be a man, be strong, be stoic. And then that's why men take their own lives in greater numbers, and that is why men have such issues with self-esteem and have such a low support system. That's why men don't talk about their issues, because society tells them not to. They're told that it's not something you should talk about. That's not something to say, Just keep it to yourself. That's what happened to me, and it caused a lot of psychological problems that I still deal with today. I have a very toxic personality. I have so many freaking issues. And I think a big part of that has to do with the fact that that my issues were ignored at a young age, and I was treated differently, and I was kind of just made to deal with it on my own. But my sister, even though she had her own issues that she could attest to, and I'm sure, there's a different side to that as well, but, she always had, even now, I'll give you a perfect example of this. If I post something sad or depressing or whatever on Facebook, I'll get no responses, except maybe somebody will come on and say, oh, you need to stop making a big deal out of it. You need to stop being so dramatic. But if she does the same thing, people will go on and be like, oh, are you okay? You can talk to me. I'm always here for you. And what's really sad to me is that there are people who we both grew up with, and school and stuff like that. I'm not in touch with anybody from my path, from school, from growing up. I'm not in touch with anybody. Every friend that I have, if I can even call them that, are friends that I've met maybe within the last 5 years. And there are people who I'll see on my sister's Facebook posts that she makes, and some of the people that post on there are people that were my friends growing up, and they support her. They won't even accept my friend request, But because she's a girl, she gets more support. People listen to her problems, and she gets more encouragement. Nobody tells her to just shut up and deal with it. Nobody tells her to just back down, keep it to yourself. People always say, "Oh, talk about it. Come to me. Talk," And I don't get to have that. Even now, I mean, sometimes I do have people who are like, "Oh, how are you?" And just on impulse, just as a reflex, I just say, "Oh, I'm fine," because I don't open up to people as much. I don't like to open up to people because bad things always happen whenever I do. If I'm dealing with something, most of the time people ignore me. They'll say, "Oh, are you, if you need someone to talk to, you can talk to me." And then I will say, "Hey, I'm dealing with something." Then they just ignore me. I was having anxiety issues at Albertsons when I was working there, and I had a friend who said I could talk to them if I was having issues. And then I messaged them and I said, "I'm having a lot of anxiety right now." And she's like, "Man, you just need to stop thinking about it. Just stop thinking. Think about something else." Kind of trivializing my, what I was going through. That's what people do when you're a man and you're dealing with something mental health related. They trivialize it, and they act like it's no big deal, or they act like you're being overly dramatic, because I guess men have to be able to deal with anything, and that's not the way we all are. And if we're able to just pick and choose our genders, then why do we still have these expectations based on gender? Why do we still expect men? I mean, I could say tomorrow that I actually identify as a woman, and would that change how people treat me? Would people still say the same thing, or would I be like my sister? But nobody would believe me if I said that. I'm not, because I don't view myself as just a guy, because I'm me. That's just who I am. And of course I'm very ignorant when it comes to transgender rights and stuff like that. I mean, I believe everybody should have rights, and everybody should be able to be free to be who they are. But you can't expect everybody to understand it. And I admit that if somebody just suddenly says they're if you knew somebody as something their whole lives and they've never given you any indication otherwise, and then suddenly they're a whole different person, that's like, oof, that's hard to get used to. Of course, I've never been in that situation. I've never had somebody come out as trans to me. I've had people come out as gender fluid, where it's like, some days I feel like a guy, some days I feel like a girl. But I don't get that at all. I also don't get the queer thing. Suddenly people are starting to use the word queer, and I still don't know what it means. They whenever people say, it used to just be LGBT, and now they stick a Q on there, LGBTQ, and then some people tack on other letters, LGBTQP. That's what my friend calls it, LGDBP, or something, because I guess they think that Democrats are trying to normalize pedophilia or something, which I don't think anybody's trying to do that, except maybe NAMBLA. But, I mean, Jesus Christ, dude. No way. That'll never happen. I hope not. I mean, Jesus, a child can't consent. And then you gotta put another B on there for bestiality. Or put a Z. Shit. LGBTZ. My microphone fell again. Oh my god. I have a hard time being comfortable in chairs, so I always have to shift around, and sometimes I knock into stuff. Again, I'm not the most culturally sensitive guy. I'm not the most socially aware guy in the world. So I would take what I say with a grain of salt. I'm very ignorant to a lot of things. I admit it. And I'll make jokes about things. But, you know, I don't know. I was thinking about the queer thing because, you know, queer used to mean like odd, unusual, and now, and then for like throughout all my life and before that, sometime before that, queer meant gay. It was like a slang term for gay. And now all of a sudden, you hear people say, "I identify as queer." I was like, when did that word change? When did the meaning of that word change? Because I was not there for that transition. That etymological transition of when queer went from being a slur for gay people to being an identity. That's like taking the word retard and then using it as like a blanket term for people who have some kind of. It's like I have a neurological disorder, but I don't have a specific kind. I don't know what I am, so I'm a retard. That wouldn't make any sense. So I don't know. I'm probably offending all sorts of people. But I don't get queer. I'm sorry, I just don't get it. I don't get why they use that word and why all of a sudden now we're expected to treat it like it's less of a slur. Because queer is a slur. Everybody's always said that. Everybody's like, "What are you, a queer?" You know, it's like fag. You know, people wouldn't say I identify as a fag. You know, just because I identify as a cunt. Yeah, I don't know. The world is a strange place, and the thing about cancel culture is it isn't just celebrities that it affects. It affects, some of your good friends will block you because of something that you said. I got into an argument with somebody on Twitter over beauty standards because I would say that a vast majority of women, so the vast majority of everybody is shallow in some degree. We all have preferences. We all have things. And there are certain things. I would say that a good portion of men don't want a woman who is overweight. Many of them do. I've met many men. I've never seen an overweight girl have trouble finding relationships. Never. Just about every fat girl, I shouldn't say fat, every plus-sized girl, every plus-sized woman that I've met who is straight usually has a boyfriend. And these guys, and I've talked to these guys too, and you don't want to say anything, you know. You don't want to say, "Oh, your girlfriend's a whale," because that's mean. That's totally mean. But you do wonder sometimes, it's good. It's good that they're willing to overlook stuff like that. But it's like for instance, I had a friend who every person that he seemed to date was overweight, and not just overweight. Like there's people. Based on the body mass index thing, just about everybody is considered overweight in some degree. But the kind of women that he dated were like the very unhealthy looking overweight women. The ones who didn't seem like they had drank any water. Their hair always looked fried, you know. And it's like, okay, those people deserve love too, you know. And that's fine. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna judge you. I'm not gonna look down on you for sure. Because that's great, you know. that you don't have those kind of standards. But but then they would try to set me up with people, and I admit I'm I don't have to date a model because I know I'm not a 10. I don't have to but I can't date somebody if I'm not attracted to them. That's just the way it is. Like, if I'm not physically attracted, and I'm not the kind of person, I know if I'm going to be attracted to somebody whenever I first meet them. I know that sounds silly to some people. It's like, well, you don't even know them yet. It's like, yeah, I know I don't. And I might like them as a person. But we're talking about physical attraction. We're talking about sexual attraction. We're talking about, is this somebody that I want to be intimate with? And that's something that I know right off the bat. Of course, that changes based on personality too. Like, if there's somebody who's really attractive, but they have a horrible personality, then I'm not going to be sexually attracted to them myself. That's just kind of the way it is. But it doesn't really work the other way around for the most part. Somebody can have a great personality, and I might want to be friends with them. But I'm not going to want to be in a relationship with them because I just don't find them physically attractive. It's nothing against them. I'm not judging them. I'm allowed to have that preference. But the thing about being overweight, though, is that it's always something that you can change. Most people aren't genetically overweight. Because if you look 100 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of people who were overweight. Most people were pretty thin. It's the way our society is, and it's the way we live in a consumer world now. And there's fast food joint on every corner. So, it's all about impulse control. It's about controlling your diet. And I'm not the best person about that myself, because I have to limit myself from fatty foods and unhealthy stuff to have a control over it. I have to be away from it. It's like being an alcoholic. You can't be in a bar if you're an alcoholic, or else you'll want to get a drink. Or, yeah, I guess that's a good example. I don't know. Not comparing, compulsive eating to alcoholism, because that's a disease in and of itself. But, I understand the problem with compulsive eating, but you have to draw a line at some point. And, look, if you're comfortable with doing that, that's fine. But it's not healthy, and you can reverse it. That's the thing. But a lot of women, their standards of beauty in men, what they demand from men, is usually something that they have no control over. Things like their height, or the amount of hair on their head. You can't always help it. You can try your best to, I don't know, do exercises that make you taller, which, it sounds dangerous. And you could try to do whatever you can to fix your hair, but if you can't afford it, what can you do? And a lot of women, all you have to do is look at the statistics and look at the surveys and stuff that, that people have done with women. And the vast majority of them will say, oh, I don't think I could date a bald guy. But even more so, because, you can't always trust what people say. If a woman says that, oh, no, I would date a bald guy. They may say that, but you don't always know if that's true. But you have to look at the testimony of men who have lost their hair, which I'm experiencing. I'm lucky enough that it hasn't gotten, as bad as it will probably get yet at 26. Of course, I'm taking stuff for it, and if I could, I would buy. I would pay for a hair transplant or something. But, what am I saying? I lost my train of thought already. Oh yeah. If you listen to the testimony of a lot of men and their experiences with women, you will find that hair makes a huge difference with the majority of women. That's just the way it is. It's, and if you hear that and you get up in arms, you're just like, well, that's not the way women are. Women aren't that shallow. Many of them are. You may not be that way, which is good. I'm glad that you can look past it. But you're like the guy that will date an overweight girl. You know? You're the exception. Yeah. That's what I have to say about that. And I don't know who's listening to this, honestly. And I'm sorry if I've ruffled some feathers. I'm sorry if I've offended you in some way. I don't try to, but you can't please everybody. And I've learned that. And I'd rather just be open about what I think. And if you want to change my mind, you can try and change my mind. But you're not going to change somebody's mind by blocking them. And by shutting them out of your life. And it's one thing if it's some nobody that you don't even know at all. But Billy was my friend. And he did that. And I can't look past it. I don't know what has gone into him. I don't know what has happened to him. Why he felt the need to do that and not even give me a reason. I find it despicable. And I find it cowardly. Anybody that just blocks somebody just because they have a differing opinion is weak. You're a weak person. If you can't even confront your issues with somebody. So I'm not going to blame myself for anything with this kind of stuff. I admit that sometimes I misspeak and sometimes I say things that people don't like, but that's just who I am. And you could try to understand my side of it, or you can move past it. But if you're just going to block me for it, when I haven't done anything to you personally, I haven't insulted you, I haven't attacked you, that's on you. And you are not a mature person if that's how you handle your problems. So I don't have a time limit for this podcast. I don't know what else to say. I'm about at the hour 7-minute mark. So I'm probably going to start winding this down. I don't know if anything that I say makes sense. But hopefully you have enjoyed this podcast. So, yeah, I've gotten a bit heated with people lately. I don't mean to, but part of it is my mental health hasn't been great. My body dysmorphia has really given me a lot of anxiety and depression lately. And it's hard for me to talk to people because people just ignore me and people just, I don't know, people don't care about anything that I do, no matter what it is. And it's just hard for me to just keep on doing. I want to keep doing something because I want to stay productive, which is why I'm doing stuff like this podcast. And I don't know when I'll have another guest on. I have a podcast. I did an episode with Dyspraxic Sing-Song Mike, which I need to finish and upload. I was going to redo the introduction. If he doesn't have a problem with me. I'm hoping not. Because he was also a big fan of Billy's. He did my theme song, which I'm still going to use no matter what. Yeah, I'll be putting that up shortly, but I wanted to make this podcast to talk about some of the things that were relevant and pertinent to my current situation. And again, I have nothing but love for people within the dyspraxic community. I didn't even realize there was a community until quite recently. There's a lot of people that have been vocal about their experiences, and I think that's great. And I want to encourage them, and I want to support them if they can, and hopefully people can support me. Because I'm not trying to hurt anybody. But I have to be myself. I can't be anybody else, and I can't be what you want me to be. I can't coddle you and your sensibilities. Because you have to deal with things on your own. If you can't handle criticism, then you are not going to make it in this world. That's what I've learned. And I'm criticized all the time. And I'm going to be further criticized. But I'm going to keep on doing what I'm doing. Even though it's not going to amount to anything, probably. I'm probably not going to make any money off of doing stuff like this. Probably not going to gain much of a fan base. because I guess because my opinions aren't popular, I guess. I don't know. And I guess I'm not really very likable. I don't have very much confidence. I don't have very good self-esteem. And you know, my life will probably end by my own hand someday. After my parents are gone, I would say. That would be my plan. But let's hope that won't be for a while. And it won't be right after, but, when I'm in my 40s and I've accomplished nothing and I'm bald and fat and, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you might criticize what I say, but just keep in mind you're probably doing better than me. I'm the loser. I'm the pathetic one. I'm the one I may have my opinions and you might have a problem with it, but just remember that I'm not happy. I'm not a happy person. I'm a miserable guy. And I'm trying to make the most of what I have. My life didn't turn out great. Yours probably turned out way better than mine. I don't deserve to be treated as a monster by people that I thought were my friends. And evidently Billy Stanley wasn't my friend, no matter what he's done to me, or done for me. It was all fake, and he was an imposter. He betrayed me. So did the other people who blocked me. There was another person who blocked me, who went by the name Deviant Dyspraxic, and she was going to be on my podcast, and she blocked me as well. And other person blocked me too. His name was like Autistic Aaron, and we were talking about doing a podcast at some point as well, but he blocked me too. And evidently, I didn't see it, but Billy made some sort of post on Twitter. Somebody responded I guess, responding to me, even though I didn't comment on it. But I'm assuming I was mentioned in it. And somebody, Kaylee Morgan, who I was supposed to do a podcast with, she was the one who we were supposed to do a podcast about feminism, or about gender stuff. And of course, she decided not to do that. And I talked about that in a couple of episodes ago. And she posted a comment that said, "I'm glad we're standing up in the name, or standing up against misogyny." As if I'm like part of the problem. As if I'm like the misogynist. It's great to talk about what issues women face. And I support that. I support the Dyspraxic Women's Group. But I won't stand for people who are going to just trash men just for being men. We're not all pigs. We're not all monsters. And we have issues that we face as well, and that deserves to be talked about. Can't we be all inclusive for everybody, for everybody's sake? I think so. So thank you for joining my podcast. I hope that you picked up something from this, even if it's more hate. That's fine. I'm used to hate. I've dealt with it my whole life. It's not going to hurt me. It's not going to kill me. But I'm still going to do this. I don't know if I'm ever going to have a guest again, because I seem to be an enemy among the dyspraxic community, apparently. I didn't think I was. I thought I was one of the biggest supporters. But evidently, everybody's again. Not everybody. There's a lot of people who are still great people who support me and my inclusion. And they're kind of hurt about this as well. They don't understand. They're kind of confused. They're like, why did Billy block Brandon? I don't understand. But that is what happened. I'm confused as well. I can only assume it had something to do with some of the stuff I said about feminism and possibly women. But I wasn't saying it in a misogynistic context, you know? I mean, why is it that you can trash men all you want, but at the moment you say something critical about women, you're a misogynist? That doesn't make sense. That just doesn't make sense to me. Both sides deserve criticism, and both sides deserve praise, and we all deserve inclusion. So I'm not going to say I did anything wrong. I didn't deserve to be blocked. I didn't deserve to be criticized the way that I was. I am just trying to start the conversation on both sides. I'm just trying to say I'm an egalitarian. I believe in everybody should be equal. Everybody should be the same. Part of being equal is taking responsibility. Yeah. And there's other issues too in the dyspraxic community. I mean, the whole thing is crumbling. Everything is falling apart. I'm not going to mention any other names. I've already doxed people that I probably shouldn't have, and I might regret that later. But there's people who have done a lot for dyspraxia, and now they're being demonized, and now they're being taken down, and some of it may be because of their toxic behavior. I get that. But you also have to weigh the good and the bad. And you have to also take into consideration that perhaps sometimes people say and do things because of issues with their mental health. Right? That's what I think. So anyway, that's about it for this podcast. Once I get service, we'll see what else happens with this drama that's unfolding. Drama seems to follow me wherever I go. I guess it keeps things interesting. But thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I feel like I've said that like 5 times, but we're finally going to end it this time. We're finally to the end. It looks like we might have made it. Yes, it looks like we've made it to the end. Thank you. Theatrics. Dun, dun, dun.